All right, welcome back to
Wow.
the Rage of Aquarius podcast, the Outsider Astrology podcast. I'm your host, Andrei Burke. I'm sitting here with my lovely co-hosts, Rachel Capurso of Aeolian Heart Astrology and Frederick Woodruff of Woodruff Astrology. And today we're here to talk about the Ascendant,
Right on.
otherwise known as the rising sign.
Thank you.
Confused with the rising sign.
Yeah, confused with the rising sign. You remind me of when I was in the Mormon church. There'd be these little kids that would get up to give talks every Sunday, and their moms would have to like whisper in their ear the whole talk.
I'm a stage mom.
Is
Yeah.
Rachel doing that to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, we just thought it would be a good topic to explore because it's fundamental, it's foundational, it's one of the most important concepts that you learn when you first start studying astrology. But I think that both Andrei and Frederick and I all have experienced that what you first learn about the rising sign is exceedingly shallow and
Right.
does not really open your understanding or lead your imagination to grow around, the most basic tenets of what the rising sign is. And so we just wanted to expand on that topic a little bit to deepen the understanding of what the rising sign represents. And we all have a lot of experience with studying this and reading charts, so I think it will be a very fruitful conversation.
Yeah, I'll add just quickly at the start to distinguish between the term ascendant and rising sign.
Oh yeah.
Well, just because some people they think it's the same thing. The ascendant technically is the exact degree of the sign that's rising at the time of one's birth. And then the rising sign is simply that sign. So my ascendant is like, 19 degrees Leo, but the rising sign is Leo. I mean, it seems sort of like a stupid distinction, but I think it's good to help people understand what that's about.
It's like New York City and New York State.
There you go.
But that is actually really important, and it didn't even occur to me to bring that up, but it's true. Your ascendant and your rising are the same sign, but they're not the same thing, because you're right, the ascendant is that specific degree
Right.
that marks the angles of the chart, which is really important. And the angles of the chart are what determine the houses, and basically the whole chart is constructed from the position of that one angle, the ascendant. So that's what it's all built upon. And I recall that every time I teach astrology, there is a lot of confusion about how to read one's horoscope if you're going to be reading your horoscope. And of course, most people read for their sun sign, but it's more accurate usually. And it's also really a good practice if you're going to be reading horoscopes to actually read the horoscopes for your rising sign. Because that's going to give you more insight into where the planets are transiting and what kind of developmental cycles you're currently in terms of
Right. And that's because people that write the sun sign columns generally do a solar chart where the sign that you're born under is put on the ascendant.
Right.
And then they read where things are, landing around that wheel. But like you're saying, if you read for your rising sign, you're getting what houses the planets are literally moving through in your particular chart.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's pro tip number 1. And it is worth repeating because actually I always forget that people don't necessarily know that. So read your horoscopes for the rising sign whenever you can, if that's possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think too, speaking of beginners, and I think it is an apt definition that the sun, the moon, and the ascendant are really the main significators of the natal chart.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy for people to get why the sun and the moon would be so but then the ascendant's very elusive. And it's funny, in all the years I've studied, and that of course has been volumes of reading, it's rare to find really clearly defined definitions of what the ascendant signifies. And that's what I mean about elusive, because it's something, in my experience, that's sort of there and not there at the same time for the person. And we can talk about that more as we go. But I just wanted to confirm that that trio is really like the basic skeleton for the chart. The sun representing, you could say, the present, the moon, more of our habitual nature, our past, and then the ascendant has sort of like a flavor of leaning into the future. And I'll say more about that as we go to some ideas I have on that.
Absolutely. I think we should start by actually addressing the most ubiquitous cliche about the rising sign or the ascendant that you'll hear repeated ad nauseum anywhere you look, everywhere you look. It's the most basic bitch description of the ascendant, which is, and I'm actually just going to read this from Cosmopolitan magazine because
that is such a source to call from.
Cosmopolitan. It just represents this is the very normal,
watered down,
and watered down and also extremely cliche description of the rising sign that everybody gets when they first start studying. And so I will read. It says, your rising sign determines the way others see you and what you expect from the world around you. Some astrologers refer to the rising sign as a mask people wear.
Can't stand that notion.
The mask thing is what you'll read again and again and again, like the ultimate metaphor. And I too have really come to disagree with that and just totally reject that. And I think that the first reason why I reject the mask idea is because it implies that there's something artificial about your rising sign, that there's something about it that is constructed and that you can take it off at times and then put it back on, that it's some kind of game of like reveal and conceal. And I don't see the rising sign that way at all. That's
because you have Sagittarius rising.
Yeah. I guess so, yeah. Sagittarius.
I'll say more about that later.
Yeah. Well, just the first metaphor that I ever created to help my understanding grow, and it's certainly not the only way to look at the rising sign, but the first metaphor that I came up with was like, no, it's not a mask. It's far more like your skin. It's a way it's the way that you perceive the world. It's a sense organ, it's sensory perception, but it's also something that is sort of on the surface of you. That doesn't imply that it is fake, artificial, or even shallow. It just represents this quality of perception that you have, as well as a way that people perceive you. So that really helped me to understand the ascendant in a deeper way. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, just please keep going.
Well, I was just going to add, see, that's the dilemma about, like, say, the cosmopolitan piece, because you can see where that idea, gets watered down into, well, this is the mask that you wear. Like you're saying, you're associating it kind of with the psychic skin of a person. And of course, that is what people see when we look at other human beings as our skin. But there's also, from traditional astrology, that association of the ascendant and actually the first house, which the ascendant opens into, of that part of the chart representing the physical body of the person. And some astrologers, more esoteric, say that's the point of like incarnation that the degree of the ascendant sign represents. Spirit coming into matter. so there's that whole element as well. But I'll just add quickly that I think as Jungian psychology infiltrated into astrology, that's where the persona or the mask idea got overlaid onto the ascendant, because they, you know, they were taking that Jungian concept of the persona, the mask, and going, oh, well, that fits, you know, with the ascendant. And I've seen whole books, you know, written on that theme, many with covers that show those horrifying masks from comedy, you know, the happy like faces. I'm like, oh God. But anyway, sorry to go off on a tangent there. I wanted to sort of elaborate more on these simplified ideas of mask and, you know, something that's sort of fake.
Right. And the other things that you'll hear about the ascendant is that it represents your sense of self, which I kind of understand, but again, like you said, that's extremely elusive and very vague, because the whole chart is the exploration of self. And then there's also the fact that, you know, we put a lot of that self knowledge, that self awakening, that self consciousness into the descriptions of the sun. So I've always found that just calling the first house or your rising sign the self is extremely vague and kind of unhelpful as well. So, you know, I wanted to get some of your take on how it is that you do describe the ascendant when you are working with clients, and how you've come to understand your own. Because I thought it was really interesting in an article that you wrote on your Substack that you actually shared that you didn't really fully understand or connect with your Leo ascendant until your late 40s.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really interesting, because obviously you're steeped in this tradition. You've been studying it for, like, at that point, like 20 years already. And I mean, for it to take someone who's this serious about astrology that long to fully grasp their own ascendant, that says a lot. So I just wanted to hear a little bit about that. Like, what?
Well, I think to that point, and I mentioned this before we started taping, it depends. Well, how do I say it? It depends on the configuration itself of the natal chart as to ease of access, say, or ease of conscious or being conscious of one's ascendant. And then the reason I talked about it the way I did in that, I think it was that article on the 12th house that I did. It's more, for me, was about having a chart that's like 80% water signs, 80% cadent houses, and that symbolizing more of a self-contained, kind of a removed position. You know, like a 12th house sun isn't somebody that's actually, like, you know, lunging themselves out into the public and whatnot. Well, unless you're Madonna, but that's another story. It's like a discordance with having a Leo ascendant, with all of that self-contained water and cadent housery in my chart. It took me a while to understand what that dynamic was. And I really saw it in a backwards way, because I was always wondering, you know, I would kind of like shove myself out there in the world and then go through all of this sort of doubt and just being uncomfortable with, you know, having pushed myself out in some way. But then what was weird was that through my whole life, the Leo ascendant was always coming out by, you know, I worked professionally as a model for years in New York. And then I was a television host for years when I lived in Hawaii. And then, you know, I assumed this pretty big persona or whatever on the internet over the years, which is all kind of Leonian.
Yeah.
And so there was always that. This is why I was saying earlier, like the ascendant, sort of like a clue as to one's future or destiny in a way, as it's sort of pulling the rest of the chart with it and pushing in a first house or Aryan way out and projecting out. And it doesn't matter if it's a fire sign or whatever. On the ascendant, there's that portal between oneself and the outside world, and then how things are moving and flowing in and out of that portal. So does that answer that question?
Yeah, I mean,
You know,
I like that take.
yeah, there's like it is a sort of, it gathers, interprets, and sort of filters all the energies of the chart.
yeah,
Uh, and yet in some ways that can be something that you're perhaps not even that conscious of a lot of the time, you know, like I feel very similar about Sagittarius rising. It has been strange to look at my life and see that I, for a large part of my life, a very large part, it's much different now. I'm starting to get it more, but I did not identify with the qualities of Sagittarius
there you
conscious.
go.
I was more, I mean, I'm a sun in Virgo. Therefore, you know, my sun is squared to my rising sign, not specifically to my ascendant, but my sun in Virgo was something that I definitely was aware of, conscious of. I could definitely feel those qualities. And I would have described myself, if I were to write like a small, you know, paragraph about how I think I show up in a room, how I think people see me, it would have been from the perspective of Virgo, very reserved, kind of shy, very, you know, quiet, studious, helpful, cooperative, all those things. I would have honestly and not been lying. I would have really seen myself that way and assumed that everyone else did too. But as I've, you know, I've grown and I've challenged myself in a lot of ways through this work, especially, I've come to understand that that was never really the case. I actually do kind of, I kind of overwhelm people a lot of the times when I walk into a room. I can actually take up a lot of space. I have a lot of big ideas and opinions that I really, you know, just share kind of clumsily sometimes. And I never really understood that about myself. Nor did I really think about how the studious nature of Virgo was so inspired by this like philosophical expansiveness that
Right,
Sagittarius represents. And so for me,
right.
I didn't get my own ascendant. It is very much like, maybe your skin is not the best metaphor, but you know, your eye color. You
Mhm.
are vaguely aware of your eye color, but really truly, how much time do you spend staring at your irises? You know, it's
Great
weird.
metaphor. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, like I know I have green eyes, but I really don't stare at my irises in the mirror and just look at them. Other people see my eye color, and I'm not really aware of it as they do. It's not something I think about at all. I just have this color in my eyes, or have this, and everybody has this certain light in their eyes that they're just not aware of. It's
Yeah, I go ahead.
it's just pouring through them, like you said about the rising. It's something that sort of pours through that filter. And even though you might have some modest awareness of it, it's really not for you. It's the energy that you express and exude and project. And it's not for you to be so self-conscious of, you know.
Yeah, I to that point, the thing that always has fascinated me about the ascendant, and over time I came to see why it was so potent, and it relates a lot to your metaphor about the eye color and how other people would see it, you know, when staring at our face
Yeah.
much more readily and frequently. but the thing about the ascendant is it's the one point in the chart that isn't, being filtered through a planet or a light, which, the planets and the sun and the moon is how we communicate or have resonance or whatever with different zodiacal signs. But the ascendant is like a pure hit. That rising sign degree is a pure hit of that sign's essence and force and power. So that to me equates with the notion of coming to understand it, at least for me, later in life. And it was more like, seeing the things, like I said, after the fact and sort of ruminating on it. But it's also like that thing that Shakespeare said, like, assume a virtue and it will be yours. And that's kind of how I think we get in tune with our ascendant, is we're kind of assuming and doing things that maybe we don't feel we're that apt at or whatever, unless like the sun is like conjunct your ascendant, say, or your moon's there. Which might be why Madonna, going back to her, had such an much easier time with her Virgo ascendant, because her moon's right there. But so that it takes time and sort of acting things out within the realm of what that sign's function is, to start to really see, oh, that's how, my ascendant is showing up. I'm drawn to experimenting with or acting out these things or trying them out. I've always learned the most about astrology by trying it out, by, teaching it or researching it or writing about it. And then, it's that acting out of the thing. And then I actually kind of have that under my skin, or it becomes more innate to me. And I would imagine you as a Virgo, that's a similar experience.
Absolutely.
So there's like an autobiographical quality to astrology, to learning astrology, that's essential to like actually understanding astrology.
Yeah, say more about that. Like, you're riffing on what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting. It's like there, you really do need to have some have cultivated a sense of self-reflection without self-obsession. That
Well,
that you could just understand, you could see, you could clearly, you can objectively see narrative patterns and behavioral patterns and relationship patterns that have repeated throughout your life. Like I said, without like that kind of like obsessive, like self-obsessive neurosis of like, why is this always happening to me? It's because my mother did the.
Right, or my friends in Scorpio, or yeah,
to just see like, oh, I see how that has actually played out. I'm actually able, and when I say autobiography, I'm actually, seeing your life as a story, as possessing some kind of arc, where there is a catharsis, where there is some kind of catharsis, not necessarily at the end, because the story is constantly unfolding, but where there are moments of, there are turning points, and there are moments of just self-realization that just kind of like strike. And you have to have that kind of like that sense of there's a flow to it, but there's also an organizational quality to it. It's authorship. Yeah, you have to. Yeah, so it's a very
specific word.
When you study astrology and when you practice astrology, you really need to assume that authority over yourself as an author does their own their own work.
Yeah, I think it's intimidating for people, though, that initial foray, like it just seems overwhelming, when you start to really like open your eyes to a chart and you know, it's like, Jesus Christ, there's planets, there's lights, there's houses, there's signs, there's aspects, there's fixed stars, there's dark planets, there's, you know, I think it takes a certain kind of audacity is the word I use that really artists have
Yeah.
to go into astrology and go, okay, I'm going to learn these basics, you know, get that down, and then I'm going to cut loose with it.
Yeah.
And just, you know, let myself go. So I always tell students, you know, get the basics down and then start doing chart after fucking chart after chart, because it's when you're there, either sitting with the person or I don't know, on Zoom or whatever, that livingness, the logos of astrology then begins to imbue and educate both of you. So you're there as a midwife that opens this up, and then this exchange starts moving. And believe me, you'll always learn something new, because when you're an astrologer, you're always a student. It's just like the way it goes.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, that reminds me of this thing Liz Green said that always resonated, which was, she describes the ascendant as like this university that you go to. You know, you've got your chart, your sun and your moon, your basics, and then the ascendant, you're in there studying, learning, observing, testing, and, you know, being imbued with what the teachings of that sign are about. And I love that idea.
I do too. And I just learned that from reading your article. So I appreciate that you included that, because I've never heard
Did I say that in that article? I can't remember.
You did. And yeah, you said that you quoted her
Right.
school or university. And I liked that a lot, because it also reminds you that there is this work to do. This is not understanding or embodiment that's just going to be handed to you on a silver platter. There's this process of work, refinement, shaping. And so in that way, it goes back to what you were saying, Andrei, that there is like kind of a sense of authorship that you're developing. And that to really understand your rising sign requires work, which I think is really important. And you also talked about that concept in the article, regarding what Gurdjieff said about the how, like you said, from a Gurdjieffian perspective, a soul is not a birthright. It's not.
Yeah, it's not a given.
Yeah, you don't just have a soul and it's perfectly formed and there's nothing to be done. There's no work to be done. You can just float through life. He taught that a soul has to be forged.
Right.
And I agree with that. I first learned that from John Keats, the great romantic poet, who died very, very young, 25, 26 years old, of tuberculosis. And his whole life was like a great tragedy. It just like never stopped. He lost so many people in his life, his father, most of his family. And he was not an aristocrat. He was this like working class boy. He had to, write his poetry, which became award winning before he was 25. He was writing his poetry at night after putting in a long day as an apprentice in a gross sawdust floor surgeon's room. So like they were sawing legs off and like doing crude surgeries and crude stitches with a sawdust floor by day, and then by night he's retreating to like a little cell to go write his poetry. But just all this tragedy and all this loss, and then he is a famous poet almost overnight when his first book is published, and then he finds out that he's dying of tuberculosis. And so now he has to face that there's going to be no fame, because he's not going to be able to live, and he can't get married even though he's madly in love with this woman. He's going to have to let it all go and just die. And so all of this tragedy made him extremely philosophical, and he wrote extensively about how the soul has to be made through life experience, and that suffering and tragedy was a part of that soul making.
Mm-hmm.
And I really agree with that. I think that it's something to really consider, because I don't know, the current kind of status quo new age teaching is that, you know, there's really no work to do. You're just here for some reason that's very vague, and everything's just sort of handed to you internally. And there's nothing that you have to really struggle with or try for. You're just perfect as you are, you're whole as
Yeah.
you
I
are.
think this is why Gurdjieff, you know, people always say, well, why was he always, you know, generating so much conflict, you know, around him and the
Yeah.
people he worked with? And it was that idea that people really don't forge anything that could be called permanent within their consciousness without friction and
Yeah.
without, you know, suffering. I mean, the word suffering's taken on all these weird connotations over the years, but, you know, it's really just kind of, it's basically being forced out of one's comfort zone,
Yeah.
which
Mm-hmm.
is really a lunar kind of configuration in the psyche, you could say. You know, that, you know, images of symbiotic state with the mother, the world was our oyster, everything was taken care of, all of our needs were met, our diapers were changed. And, you know, that leaves an imprint in the psyche that kind, which I consider kind of lunar. I mean, that's just one. I mean, the moon is multifaceted, so I don't want to get canceled here by moon advocates, but you know, that lunar idea of the pull towards the habitual or the comfortable or the past, yeah, it has to get shaken through friction, upheaval, and then person learns their solar principle of their stamina
Right.
that's there to come forth. But I want to say something to what Andrei got me thinking about with authorship. Was that the word you used?
Yeah. Yeah.
Autobiographical.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I learned this from Stephen Arroyo. He's done some of the, for people that wanted to know like some good books to study on the ascendant, I would definitely recommend Arroyo's work. But anyway, he said that the ascendant reveals the way we feel ourselves to be uniquely ourselves. And I think that echoes back to what Andrei was saying there about say it, autobiographical.
Autobiographical.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Autobiographical qualities that you know, come with self-expression and owning it. And then that it's not getting a sense of being special. It's about being, you know, unique to the kind of animal one is. And I think the ascendant does have that as a marker in the chart. And I can just speak for myself when the Leo part of my nature is operating, say, at optimal level, it just feels fucking great.
Yeah.
You
No.
know?
Yeah.
You know?
No, totally. I mean, like I was I listening to your both of your autobiographical reflections on your relationship to your ascendant. I almost want to say like my experience was almost like how Rachel was saying, like she, you know, she never realized how she was just this kind of like, she always thought she was this super studious, helpful Virgo, never realized she was this, you know, really larger than life personality. And you were always, you know, you always kind of felt you were this more like,
Self-contained, shy, quiet,
shy, but then you're like,
answer.
you know, your TV announcer. I'm like, my experience was almost the exact. I had no idea because I'm a Capricorn Sun, Capricorn Moon. I had no idea what those energy like. I my whole life I was just this just kind of wild, unrestrained, like a wild stallion, just wild, unrestrained, untamed, no discipline, no Capricorn qualities whatsoever. It was all Sag. It was just all just like, idea, philosophy, and the search for truth, and the truth was changing every 10 minutes, and that didn't matter because fuck you, I'm always right. And just bad decision after bad decision. And it was like, it wasn't until I'd say probably around my Saturn return, around I turned 30, that like it was like Capricorn dad came home and was like, what the hell have you been doing the whole time I've been away?
Just wait till your father gets home.
Yeah. And it was like, did you throw a party while like, it was like that. And then I've spent like the last like 8 or 9 years in this, almost like this shame for having those qualities, this like the like I have to really keep my Sagittarian qualities restrained, no, down boy down, and overemphasizing the Capricorn stuff, and overemphasizing that the need for like discipline and austerity and maturity. And I think it's really been in like the last, maybe even like the last few months, that I've like really felt that it's okay to bring that Sagittarian quality out again. It's okay to play, it's okay to it's actually okay to like express yourself in a really like wild, unrestrained way.
Well, I mean, not to rationalize what you're saying, or I think that's the right word. I think though, Sun, Moon, Capricorn, I mean, just the Capricorn experience is sort of something, it almost seems to be on hold with the person. It's that cliche, but I think there's truth in it about, the Saturnine shading of Capricorn. It's later. It's, in maturity is when that really starts, they really start to bloom and open, like, heading into their 40s and shit.
No, and I actually just did say, I mean, talk about like autobiography and self-reflection, and like how you always give like the best advice to other people. I actually just gave that advice to somebody who was asking me about their Capricorn moon. I was just like, well, because there's like, I'm a total pushover, but I've noticed I've really been laying down harder boundaries since I turned 30. And I'm like, oh yeah, that happened with me too. Like it just kind of became like, like fuck you, pay me, kind of became my, my motto,
Well, it's like the Capricorn, they know what's hovering, like, wait, that's gonna open and bloom more as they, move into their Capricornianness as they age. I don't know, there's just something about chronology with Capricorn that just goes together. It's like Cancers are like the opposite. They're like always babies. Or they're mothering somebody, or they're trying to get mothered. They're lost in that lunar realm again of memories of, that symbiotic kind of bliss or whatever, when they were merged with mom or growing in her stomach. So they have like an opposite thing that they sort of have to shed to come into their ascendant.
I mean, I have a Cancer moon, and so that's the opposite of what Andrei has. And I've always been very aware of Andrei's Capricorn nature. It's funny that his perception is this way, because he certainly was. I described him when we were young as being feral. He was like unsocialized. He just didn't act like anyone else. He didn't know how to act. But I liked that about him because he was very honest and like witty.
Well, there's the Sag,
like he was not a monster. Otherwise, I would not have had any interest in him. He was a really sweet person, but he also was just kind of brutally honest, and really, he had fresh perspectives, and he did not know how to fit in, which I thought was a great quality. But the deeper relationship that we had, I always felt that Capricorn, because I have a Cancer moon. That means I am a baby. I mean, I really am. I'm the first one to say help. I'm the first one to say I'm cold, I'm hungry. I'm the first one to cry because something's gotten too scary or hard. I also am very comforting to people and everything, but what I actually liked about Andrei was that he had this toughness, like this real strength, internal strength. And he was always hanging out with his grandparents and taking care of them, and very, very conscientious about giving back to his grandparents, because a
Well,
lot of
see,
Capricorn,
that's Capricorn operating in youth,
100%.
hanging with the grandparents,
Oh
and
yeah, no, dude. Every Sunday, like
yeah.
by the first, I'd say between the ages of when did I moved out I moved out at like 21.
Mm-hmm.
Even still when I was living at home and I was just a wild child and I was out partying all the time, I like had to be home on Sunday to take the trash out for my grandmother.
Yeah, I always respected that, so
Mm.
it was there. But interesting that you were more conscious of your rising and not so conscious of your sun.
Yeah.
But in the second house, like it's something that Frederick also brought up in this article, was that, the 12th house, the second house, the sixth house, the eighth house, they they can't see the ascendant.
Well, that's
Like,
taken, yeah, from Hellenistic astrology. I was just riffing on some of those ideas.
oh,
But
totally.
yeah, it's like the idea is those houses don't make proper like aspects to connect, to the ascendant.
Right.
So they're not seeing it. Or so a sun in the second house would sort of be unanchored, or, it would take a while for it to bubble up. But I don't know. That's one of, those weird laws or whatever within that school.
Right, right.
Um, I
It makes
mean,
sense. I get what they're saying.
yeah, I'm just saying, I don't know empirically until I talked to Andrei. No, I'm kidding. I didn't. I never knew empirically how accurate that was or not. I mean, it was just kind of theorizing or toying with those ideas in that article as
Yeah.
Right.
possible way to understand the 12th house.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, that was definitely my experience, was just like, you know,
But where's your Jupiter?
in Capricorn.
Oh my God. So see, the Jupiter as the ruler of the chart was, that that brought the Sagittarian vibes
Yeah,
over into the Capricornian there, and
it
sort of let it run wild.
Yeah.
yeah, no, it definitely did, and it's conjunct to my moon too, so it was like totally magnified.
Instinctively going, yeah, yeah, I get it.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I also, my grandmother was a Capricorn too, and there's something you actually said earlier too, like that the Capricorn is always kind of looming over you, you know?
Waiting to unfurl its
Yeah, yeah. Well, and
right.
she took it upon, I was the baby of the family, and she took it upon herself to baby me so much more than all the other grandkids. I mean, there was that kind of like last in the lineage thing, the last in the generation thing.
Yes.
But I mean, also I know that in her youth she was into all of the, she was reading tarot cards, she was going to seances, she was reading natal charts. I don't know why she cut it out like by the time I came around. But it was something that was always kind of at the back of her head. And so like, everybody in the family was always at a certain point was just always like, Graham, you're babying him way too much. And her response was like, would always be something like, let me just do this for him, because it's not going to be, it's not going to get any easier for him going, he's got this thing that I have looming over him. And everybody in my family are they're all like fire signs and water signs. So like we were kind of like the odd men out, amongst all these like, very, feeling and willful people. But yeah, so she had this quality, it was this kind of like, I know what's coming for him, so let me just give him an extra slice of cake right now.
Mm. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. I feel like the point about the ruling planet is important as well, because this is like a next layer of reading charts that is really eye-opening, especially at the beginning. I feel like that was probably the most exciting layer that I learned in basic astrology that added to my understanding, was weaving that ruling planet in. So every sign has a planet that rules it. And when you know your ascendant or your rising sign, it's important to see where its ruling planet falls in your chart and to actually kind of draw an invisible line, or it actually might be aspected as well. But even if it's not, you draw this invisible line and thread the position of that planet by house and sign into your concept of the rising sign. And this is always very valuable. So in the case of Andrei and myself, we're both Sagittarius risings, and we were both born with the ruling planet of Sagittarius, Jupiter, in Capricorn, which is traditionally considered to be debilitated. You know, according to traditional astrology, Jupiter does not like being in Capricorn. But I have come to really love my Jupiter in Capricorn, and I've learned to appreciate it. So that process of learning to recognize the good qualities of your ruling planet, whether it's in a powerful placement or quote unquote debilitated placement, that comes from the same work, the same sense of authorship, the same, I guess, audacity that you were talking about, Frederick.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from the same process. It comes from that desire to deepen your understanding and work with the energies you've been given, work with the role that you've been given, work with the qualities that you have in the best way possible, which again is just like that idea that Gurdjieff said about the soul having to be forged. You know, making something of your planets, even if they're strongly placed, is still work that has to be forged. Like, we do have natural proclivities and natural talents and natural graces, but you know, even if you have a natural gift, like Andrei's brother, for example, apparently when he was growing up, he had a natural gift for piano, but he doesn't care about piano at all. And therefore he's just stopped playing and he never wants to play again. And so he just let that natural gift fall by the wayside. He had no interest in forging that into something great. So
but maybe he didn't, he was, maybe he just wasn't interested.
Like, no,
he's not. It was a gift he had. He had a special talent for it, but like he was whatever. It's just not his desire to
right
that. So it's very much the same with like a very strongly placed ruling planet or a debilitated planet. Just understanding how you can work with that best. And if it contains qualities and gifts that come easy to you, well, then any work, any forging you do to refine that is going to make it even greater. Or if you have a difficult placement, like, for example, Jupiter in Capricorn, debilitated ruler of your chart, there's a lot to be gained from that as well. Because when, at least in the experience that I've had, I find that the need to work to find the strength of a planet, the need to actually explore that in a more nuanced way, to actually develop some tenacity, to evolve its gifts, that gives you character.
Well, and just to be more specific, like Jupiter, well, first of all, I want to say, because this shit makes me crazy.
Yeah.
I know when you and I worked together years ago, we talked about this. You know, planets and falls, debilitation, exaltation, all of that. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it, you know, I think there is something about rulership that is germane to the idea that a planet has an affinity or a resonant. Different planets, lights have affinity or not with different signs.
Yeah.
So, of course, I know how the rulerships are defined. It's this, you know, you've probably seen that diagram that's, I think, from Hellenistic or traditional astrology, where how the rulerships, you know, are defined and all of that, or how they're assigned rather. But I will just say there is something that is undeniably accurate about you know, Mercury ruling Virgo, the moon, Cancer, all of that. And then debilitated planets or planets in their fall are really, they're just, they're in a kind of static, or there's a not as strong as an affinity, say, with the sign. But say, take Jupiter and Capricorn, it's like, okay, when that discipline and that reining in happens that Capricorn is apt at, the Jupiter force or function is amplified, because suddenly, rather than shooting out in 400 different directions at one time, which it's, you know, nature is to do. If you studied Jupiter or Zeus and myth, he was like fucking everywhere and fucking everything. But when that gets channeled, I mean, then it's, wow, that Jupiterian expansiveness and all that is, you know, just burgeoning. So there's always, you know, I think it's important, because especially with student astrologers, there's this weird tendency in people to, you know, they're looking for the bad thing, looking for the problem, looking for where they're going to get a puzzle or get hung up. And then they get fixated on that. Oh, my moon's in Scorpio. Oh my God, it's in its fall, and you know, this whole story starts to spin about that.
Yeah.
So I always try to be careful and, you know, talk about those, that concept within astrology of debilitation. You know, what is it? The dignities? What's it called?
Essential dignities. Yeah.
Tell how much I know about, remember on this shit. Like, yeah, the dignities, like, take that with a grain of salt, or take it up a level and see, you know, how it can be creatively utilized or whatever. Because the universe doesn't have, the universe is just this functioning holistic totality. There aren't things separated out that are, you know, good and bad. I'm always get irritable around dignities and stuff like that.
And
so that's my screed on it.
No, and I really get what you're saying too about that quality of like astrologers and astrology students automatically going for, like, you know, what's the worst case, and, you know, what's the worst case scenario, what's the cold case file that I need to solve.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When I worked those psychic lines, that would be the first thing people would ask me on the phone. Well, just tell me the bad stuff.
Yeah.
Like, and they wanted to get that, you know, like, just expose it, you know.
And no, yeah, for the semester, the one semester that I thought about being a psychology student in my undergrad, like, you know, the first class I enrolled in was abnormal psychology, and I thought I was being really original because I wanted to go for the hard stuff. And like, and on the first day of class, the professor was also, how many people is this their first psychology class? And we all raised, like, more than half the class raised their hand. And he gave the exact same speech, that it's just like, they, you know, everybody just wants to go for, like, the schizophrenia, the, you know, the paraphilias. They want to go for, like, you know, they just, you know, that's what they think psychology is. You know, they don't understand that it's actually just, like, you know, maybe just like working with an accountant for a really long time to help them get over their fear of heights, you know, right. and how it's becoming an impediment for their job because they can't fly, you know, they can't travel. No, the one thing because you said something a long time ago about, I always get it confused. Opposite of the rulership is the it's not the fall, right? What's the opposite of the rulership?
The debilitated, is that the word?
Yeah, the debilitated planets that, you know, that were in the sign opposite to their rulership.
Yes.
Where you know, because I think you were giving me a natal chart reading, and I've got my Mercury in Sagittarius, and you said that they have, like, they share the power of the sign in their rulership, but it's like unrestrained. And the way that I thought of it, and the way I internalized it, like the heuristic I used to understand that was that it's like when a sign is in its rulership, it's like at home, but when a sign is in its debility, it is debilitated, it's almost like it's like at a sleepover where like they're still themselves, but they don't have to follow all the same, it's not their house, so they don't have to follow all the same rules that they have to follow when they're at home. So like Mercury in like Mercury in Gemini, when he's in Gemini, he's got to do all the math do all of his math homework. He's got to do all the academic decathlons, and he's got to do the spelling bee and just be like the super smart, the super smart kid, the smartest kid on the block. But whereas when he's in Sagittarius, it's like he's like that gifted kid at the sleepover that just gets to like gorge himself on Skittles and candy and Pepsi, be up all night and be like a terror to the hosts.
Well, you look at, I mean, obviously, I'm going to talk about Jeffrey Dahmer today, so strap yourself in. But no, I mean, you look at Dahmer's chart. I mean, it was exaltations and rulerships all over the place, and it basically he just acted everything out without compunction. There was, his Mars was in Aries, Venus in Taurus, Saturn's in Capricorn. I forget the other stuff, and it was just a train wreck.
Wow.
So everything is, moderation, kids. Yeah. Either way, like.
Yeah, and I actually really like that point because I have the ruler of my chart is debilitated, but then I also have Mercury in Virgo, I have Venus in Libra, and I've had just as many challenges cultivating those planets or working with those planets, because the tendency for Mercury in Virgo is to become very lazy, because, and it sounds strange, but it's because when I was very young and I was, going to school was so easy for me. I just knew how to spell. I just could remember everything for the test. It was all just so easy. So I didn't have to work very hard at school. And I was given a lot of praise for being excellent at school, good student, winning spelling bees and all that. So I was conditioned to have this idea that like I get a lot of praise for, in terms of what other kids were doing at the time, less work. Like it was easy for me. But that was only true up to a certain point in life. And then I hit a wall. I find like a certain level of math where I'm not getting this very easily. And I completely collapsed when I came to the level of math that was too hard for me, because I had no idea how to really work hard and study and like actually, invest in a process of learning. And so that that is a difficult thing for me still, because it's so deeply conditioned. And so I've had to work very hard to reverse the sort of laziness that grew from having a great planetary placement. And there's problems with Venus in Libra too. As nice of a placement as it may be, I've had to work very hard with a lot of issues with people pleasing and being way too ingratiating and et cetera, et cetera. So the ultimate point is that when you are studying your chart and you're trying to actually make something of it, you're trying to take that authorship over your chart, develop things, work with things, and understand the ascendant as being that filter and also that point of projection through which everything's going to pour out. The placements of good and bad are kind of arbitrary, entirely arbitrary actually, because the whole chart is a gift, but it's also each placement has its own challenges as well. So never look at any placement in your chart as a black and white, good or bad, up or down, positive, negative. But don't get overwhelmed either. That's why, learning the sun, moon, ascendant, as Frederick described, is so helpful. It just pares things down. And then the next layer that you want to add is studying that planetary ruler of the ascendant, which is the planetary ruler of the whole chart. And I think Andrei came up with the metaphor that the planetary ruler of your chart, wherever it is, it's kind of like an ambassador that represents, the larger purpose or the larger scope of your development, of your evolution.
It's communicate. I think I actually read that in I don't know, it was like Stephen Forrest or Stephen Arroyo. It's one of the Stevens.
Oh, okay. I thought you came up with
No,
it.
my metaphor was that it was like a conductor in an orchestra.
That's right. I love that.
Oh, that's beautiful, especially if you saw Tar, the film.
Yeah, because I did. The ambassador thing was kind of like I couldn't quite.
I'm sorry, I messed that up.
No, for me my way of understanding it was that it was like a conductor, like it was Dudamel, it was I forget the guy who was LA Phil before Dudamel, but
and then there's that idea of
Stephen Maida.
You're looking at your chart is some kind of symbolic reflection of your nature. And nature can be shaped and evolved. As we know, we're human beings. That's what we do. We build upon what's natural. We build upon what we've been given. We shape it, we sculpt it, we accentuate it. Same thing with your chart. Same thing if you wrote an autobiography. It would be your story, but it would be shaped. But it is also, you're looking at your own nature. And so ultimately, there can be no planetary placement that's terrible for you, because that's a part of who you are. And so when I really clicked with my Jupiter in Capricorn, it was when I just understood that this quality of expansive restraint, the kind of disciplined growth, this very like serious philosophical quality, all of the things that you can attribute to Jupiter and Capricorn, I just recognized it as, oh, but that is really my style. I mean, that's something I like about myself, actually.
Exactly. I would add too, on just to wrap up the whole dignities thing, I always tell students, don't even go there. Like at this, because often that's shoved at them at the start, right? But just learn the basics of, the sign, the planets and the signs, the lights and the signs. Then you can dick around with this thing of dignities and falls or whatever, and see empirically if that works for you. And then another thing I tell students too, which they don't really like, is your chart really doesn't belong to you. It belongs to time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're to talk about it, an ambassador of time. Like we're born into this time body, I guess you could call it, and that little fragment that's that moment of your first exhalation, it's a moment in time, and it belongs to that big kind of infinite arc of whatever time is. So I think that helps to kind of take the too tight self-focus, off, and puts it more into the cosmic kind of holding ground, or the being part of the body of time. And that's time's chart that you share, and
it's a timeshare.
You're a timeshare, and you're participating in this big orchestrated chronological TikTok that's going on. Not the videos, but the
No, I love that.
Well, you guys, do you think we've touched on everything? I feel like closure coming up.
I think it's a good way to.
One last point, though.
One last point, but
just
it's a good place. It's a good place to start wrapping up.
Let's wrap it, kids.
The ascendant, that specific degree that we draw all the angles from in your chart, is the very specific time of your birth, the place that you were born and the exact time of your birth. And so that really does beautifully conclude the whole concept of the rising sign,
of time. The specificity, the correct time for the ascendant degree.
That's the moment of your birth. And that's why it's so beautiful and it's so significant. And I love that perspective, that this is an image of the time that you represent. And that is, we already have that concept of space. Like, if you are going to write an autobiography, you would take it upon yourself to become this, you know, this great descriptive writer of the place that you were from, the environment that you knew. And we do have that understanding that the place that we're in is not us. It's not a self-obsessed thing. It's actually like this, you're in service to describing this place, understanding this place. But time is the other layer to that. And I think that's a really great way to look at the natal chart. And I've never thought of it before. So thank you, Frederick.
Sure. And thank you both for today. I had a blast as usual.
Great combo.
Always. Well, I guess that's all for today, everybody.
That wraps it up.
That wraps it. We'll see everybody at, I guess, Thanksgiving time or something like that. Have a great Halloween.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Happy Halloween. Happy eclipse season.
And eclipse season.
Yeah, and we will be seeing you all next time. Cheers.
Thanks, you guys. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.